Did you know that the federal government changed the age where you could legally purchase tobacco products from 18 to 21 as of December of last year? There's also a bill in Vermont where they're proposing banning cell phones for anyone under the age of 21. Let's talk about both of these. Now, obviously, the bill changing the tobacco age federally is a lot more serious than banning cell phones because that's never going to happen, let's be honest. But last December, the Trump administration and Congress passed this bill, which was part of the budgeting bill, which is one of the reasons I hate omnibus bills, which raised the age you had to be to buy tobacco products from 18 to 21. And this includes things such as cigarettes, e-cigarettes, and even vapes. Now, I don't want to get into the details of vaping and if it's healthier or less healthy than tobacco and cigarettes in general. I don't hate myself because I know there are plenty of vape defenders who will die on that hill, and I'm not going to talk about it. But I will mention that vaping among teens is an issue. The reason for this regulation is because there is concern about increasing nicotine use among young people, specifically teenagers. And vapes do in fact have nicotine. And teenagers are using vapes because they think they're completely fine and harmless. Now, this proposal, believe it or not, may actually be effective. So the logic here is that if you raise the minimum age where you can buy tobacco products to 21, that's going to decrease the use of tobacco products and vapes and cigarettes in general in high schools and among teens. And believe it or not, it actually seems to work. Most of the studies done on this subject indicate that, in fact, doing this does decrease the tobacco use among young people. For example, this study found that it decreased it by about 50%, which is pretty dramatic. Most of them go between 15, 25, 45%, but the idea is still that it may in fact work. That being said, I'm still a little bit torn on this. The libertarian in me doesn't really like it when the federal government comes and says this is what you can and can't do more than is necessary. But at the same time, I recognize that it is a public health good and that if these laws work, maybe they're beneficial and maybe they should stick around. Again, I'm a little bit torn on this issue. One issue I do have with this, though, is that it abdicates the responsibility from parents to the federal government. And that is a mindset that I'm seeing far too often. Parents should be the ones who are responsible, who are knowing what their children are doing. But the federal government is basically coming in many of these instances and acting as the parent. Now, this is anecdotal, so it's pretty much pointless, but I'm going to say it anyway. My wife was a prevention specialist for a number of years. She would go into middle schools and teach them about tobacco use, drug use, and basically all of these things, like the DARE program. And what she found was that a lot of the students didn't know really anything about vapes, but not only that, their parents didn't know anything about vapes. Their parents thought vapes were fine, they didn't know what they looked like, they had no idea they had nicotine in them, and in some extreme cases, their parents had bought their kid who was in middle school a vape, even though you have to be 18 or older to buy it. They didn't think there was anything wrong with that. So parents need to be more educated about this, and they need to be more responsible when it comes to what their teens are doing. Along those lines about being more responsible, we're now going to talk about a bill in Vermont where they are proposing banning the use of cell phones for anyone under the age of 21. And obviously, this is ridiculous and it's never going to pass. The sponsor of the bill itself said that he wouldn't even vote for it if it came up for a vote. So it's not just me, there's no way this is going to pass. But I still want to talk about it, one, because it's ridiculous, but two, because it goes into the same mindset I just talked about abdicating responsibility. The reason behind this bill is very similar to the reasoning we just saw on the other bill. And the bill says, in light of the dangerous and life-threatening consequences of cell phone use by young people, it is clear that persons under 21 years of age are not developmentally mature enough to safely possess them. That was in the bill directly. So they think that people who are under the age of 21 are not mature enough for cell phones. Which, to an extent, I might agree with. Cell phones can be dangerous, don't get me wrong. And there are 1.6 million car crashes in the United States because of texting and driving. Teens are much more likely to text and drive than adults, so that is part of it is true at least. But the consequence of them owning a cell phone would be a $1,000 fine and or up to a year in prison. So this bill is completely ridiculous because not only does it want to ban cell phones because they're not mature enough, but the consequence would be going to jail for an entire year. You're not mature enough to own a phone, but you're mature enough to be in prison for a year? That doesn't really make sense to me. Again, like I said, the sponsor said to CNN, quote, "I'm not going to push for the bill to pass. I wouldn't vote for the thing. This is just to make a point." And I think there are plenty of other ways to make your point without introducing a bill that you're never going to even want to pass. But again, this leads to the fact that parents need to be more responsible. If you as a parent don't think your child is responsible enough to have a cell phone, they should not have a cell phone. It's really not that difficult. Why should this issue fall on the government telling them what they can and can't do? And I will admit, kids are getting cell phones far too young these days. There are kids in elementary school with smartphones. And not only is that a bad idea, but developmentally, it harms them. Because that much screen time is not good for such a young child. So while I agree with the idea that cell phones and teens and kids don't mix too well sometimes, I obviously don't agree with this execution. This bill, completely ridiculous. And that is it for this video. Let me know what you think about all this down below. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.